What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions podcast, where I am joined by Dr. Elsbeth Meuth and Freddy Zental Weaver, who's going to enlighten us a little bit more when it comes to the spiritual side of sexuality and how it can impact more than what we just take for granted in our regular lives. And we're really going to explore this subject and see what's up. But first and foremost, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing great. Good to see you, CJ. Thank you so much for having us on your platform.
Yes, thank you.
Oh man, I've been binge watching some of the different podcasts where you guys been talking about breath work and sexuality and intimacy. And again, like I mentioned off air, my wife's like, "Hey, make sure you pay attention today." So all you guys listening, just in case
Yeah.
you think you got it all figured out, this is one of those episodes where I think you guys are really gonna open our minds to ba- viewing sex from a completely different perspective than we usually do. But the
Yeah.
first thing that I really want to dig into was, how did this journey start for you guys?
Yeah. Okay. Well, for me, we've had our institute, CJ, here in Chicago for the last 22 years. I was first introduced to the core of our curriculum when I was 13 years old, living in Hawaii, going through my puberty, spending a lot of time in the shower. It's a lot of me doing. My father, I had the luck to have a father who was a practicing psychiatrist and, had the insight to give me a book to read on how to integrate sex and meditation.
Hmm.
So I loved it. My girlfriend loved it. And more than that, at 13, I had this vision of going on to college on athletic scholarship. But living in Hawaii, I didn't believe that I could get the training or the experience. It
Hmm.
was a belief. I did wind up going on to college on athletic scholarship. After college, I was in the software business for a long time. I kept reading books and going to workshops and applying these principles in my personal relationships. And after about 15 years, it was just a job, but I was looking for a reinvigoration of my life, knowing what I knew about these practices and my listening. So there
Hmm.
was an opportunity in Chicago. I had been in San Francisco. They hired me, moved me here. That was 22 years ago. I was single at the time, looking online for a Shakti. We were one of the early online couples.
He thought he was, CJ, he thought he was.
Yes, yes. And our synergies found Elsbeth, and we met in almost 6 months to the day. We pooled our resources and created this work, which we've been doing all over the world for the last 22 years, books, television, tapes, and so on.
Wow.
Sharing with people how to use the sexual energetic as an altered state of awareness and consciousness to get to what we don't see about what we want to create more of in our life. So that, and we'll
Interesting.
get into that as we go along. But that's a little bit about my beginnings.
Interesting.
Very different. I I wish I would have had a dad who would have given me a book on sex consciousness when I was 13 years old. Far from it. I grew up in Germany. I'm one of 10 children, and my upbringing was pretty strict,
Yeah.
and I didn't like it. So, but anyway, I didn't come to Tantra as a serious practice until I was, just hit 50. And it was very much because I felt so despaired at the time. I had, this pattern of attracting unavailable men. And
Hmm.
while it was exciting, most of the time I was alone. And there came a point when it really hit me that, looking at the trajectory, if I didn't change that pattern, I would end up without lasting intimacy and love in my life before I was going to leave this planet. And I just didn't want to settle for that. And
Hmm.
so Tantra was really a way for me to uncover what was in the way for me to bring lasting intimacy into my life and, not no longer have this unavailability show up. So that
Interesting.
was my overall intention. And what opened up for me out of the sexual healing practices and energy awareness and all of that was that I discovered that I had held distrust towards men.
Mm.
Now, I had no clue about that because, if you had known me back then, you would not have called me a distrusting bitch. You know, I was charming, I reeled the guys in, I was inviting, but underneath that, like in the subconscious, there was something that was in the way, and that is what I got to discover. Of course, it went back to early age when I was 18 years old, disappointment with a boyfriend, and, you know, having intercourse for the first time. It was so freaking painful that I had to go to the gynecologist, and the bill from the gynecologist went to my house. My dad opened it, and all hell broke loose. My dad called me a whore. The boyfriend left a few weeks later, the relationship. And so there I was totally alone, no soul to turn to. And that was a decisive moment for me when I made that decision, this kind of nanosecond coping decision that, see, Elspeth, men are not there for you when you need them. And
Interesting.
while it was like that at that time, it trailed me throughout my young adulthood into my adulthood. And so that was always in the background without me knowing. So no wonder that I attracted an availability, because that was further proof that men are not there for me when I need them. You know? So how we then recreate something out of that belief, this limiting belief that men are not there for me, that is, what becomes further reality. And so that got cleared in the tantric healing. And what opened up for me was deeper trust in myself, trust in men in general. And then voila, Freddy Zental showed up 6 months later.
Ta-da!
Mr. Right.
This is a great example, her story about what this work is for people who
Yeah.
come to do workshops or work individually, in terms of seeing something about what they most deeply desire that doesn't seem to show up.
Yeah, and I mean, right there, you just opened a can of worms, which completely got me. I'm going to deviate from the questions I have, but jumping right into that, what other things do you tend to discover when you're doing the tantric work? Because it's funny you mentioned these subconscious blockages, right? And my wife bought a book recently. It's called, I think it's called The Body Remembers. And it's all about how we store negative energy, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, and sometimes we keep it in the body. But how does tantric work on removing? Well, first of all, identifying it, because the fact that you're able to identify that and pinpoint that, I mean, people go through lifetimes not realizing that that actually exists. But how did you actually go about this process of A, identifying it, and then B, getting rid of that blockage?
Well, okay, so identifying it, people come to our work and they do an intake. So they write down what it is they most deeply desire, what they want to get out of the 3 days or the private work. And it's in that they discover what they want that doesn't seem to show up. Then in the work, which is the energetic yoga, different from the hatha yoga, the physical yoga. So, and it's all energy, we're just a denser form of it. So in the work, in the practices of meditation, sexual meditation, as I mentioned earlier, maybe I didn't, but so in the sexual, when we are in it, whether you're doing this work or not, we are more open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. Chemically, we're changed, more endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, the feel-good hormones. So with the distinctions that you learn in the workshop in terms of breath awareness, the witness state of mind, where we're able to separate the thought from the total being of who we are, that we actually are something more than our thoughts,
Yeah.
with intention, like I want to, whatever it is you've written down that you want to get out of the workshop. We get to see in the background running the subconscious in this altered state, physical, chemical, and emotional, what we don't see energetically, emotionally, story, belief. And it's in that place that we can be the witness, a curious witness of ourselves, this clay that we look into the world from, all of the experiences and all the things that keep us from allowing in what we most deeply desire. We can start to what I call flatten some of that energy, some of that belief, some of that story, to then move with grace, ease, and flow towards that thing that we most deeply desire.
Yeah. So
Wow.
there is something, CJ, that, as Freddie described it, that opens up in that altered state, because what was there for me while I had done therapy around it, I had done other approaches, all of that contributed to me. However, it hadn't gotten to the core of that
Yeah.
particular, what I call this unavailability pattern. And the process is not linear. So you mentioned earlier the body awareness and what we store in the body. Actually, memories are stored as emotions on the cellular level.
Wow.
Have you ever had that you remember something very vividly how it felt, but you wouldn't be able to even say what the conversation was?
Yeah,
but
yeah,
remember the feeling of it. And it
mm-hmm.
lives like as if just had happened,
Yeah.
like that vividly. And so we want to get to that place that lives on the cellular level. And you know how it was for me? I brought a little puppeteer. You
Yeah.
know, this is obviously it's the sexual center of a woman. In
Mm-hmm.
Sanskrit, it's called sacred space, or actually, it's called yoni, Yoni, which is translated sacred space.
Mm-hmm.
And in that ritual that I received, and I worked with a practice partner because I went by myself to these workshops because Freddie was not in my life yet. And the very purpose for me was to clear what was there so I
Mm-hmm.
could find the partner. So if people
Interesting.
come solo as singles to us, they pair up with a practice partner. And that is not about having sex now or so you're picking someone up. That's not what this is about. It's like as practice partners, we support each other in what we came for, in what we want to reveal to ourselves, in what we want to clear,
Wow.
uh, for ourselves. And the beauty of working in partnership is that, like, the body cannot distinguish is that if that is a lover or if this is a practice partner. We get triggered in
Interesting.
the same place.
Yeah.
So this ritual is very honoring of the woman. That is like when you said earlier, uh, having me in the conversation when we prepared this interview. I may bring something, a different bird eye view from
Mm-hmm.
the woman's side, is in the tantric rituals, there is a great deal of honoring, respecting, and cherishing, and nothing is taken for granted. We don't take each other for granted. So there is this ritual that even being entered, is like only going to happen with permission from her, which for some women
Mm-hmm.
that can be a healing in itself because she may not never have gotten asked. It was just taken
Mm.
for granted, you know,
Yeah.
if she wanted it or not, or so
Yeah.
it's ritualized that brings everything to some greater awareness. So being entered, and then Freddie coaches the guys how to actually listen to the yoni inside with his fingers. So guys come back and say, wow, I never had experienced that. I didn't even know. It's like a treasure place. And also sometimes there's pain in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
Pain could be physical pain, also emotional pain may show up. So for me, what happened was when I was touched around 11 o'clock, right here next to the G spot,
Mm-hmm.
a vivid memory came up that was the one of the 18-year-old
Wow.
who was asked by her first boyfriend to have intercourse. I was not ready, although I said yes. And then I told earlier all of that
Mm-hmm.
happened beyond that. And it's not that I went into this ritual thinking, oh, I have to heal my 18-year-old. No, it was like the memory came up, and along with the memory, the pain, the physical pain, that that first intercourse really produced for me. The emotional pain, it was like opening a valve. When the
Yeah.
steam gets more intense first and then it fizzles out, you can think of it like that. So the pain increased first. Really great for me to have a giver there, a man who was just there for me. That was not about himself. He could hold space, he could hold me, he could breathe with me, so that I could breathe through it. And then, just like the steam fizzles out, the intensity of the pain fizzled out. And
Wow.
in that opening, in that freedom, both of that place in the yoni, but then of course that has implications of how I feel.
Yeah.
You know, what opened up was deeper trust in myself, and then deeper trust in men in general. And as I said earlier, then I was ready to meet Freddie. You know,
That. Yeah. I mean, wow. Because I mean, I got so many questions now, but the thing is, it's kind of like you said, you almost have to open yourself up to it, man. And I mean, that's first of all, it's got to be difficult because it's almost like you had to come in there accepting the fact that, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I think that's kind of the scary thing for a lot of the guys listening, including myself. It's kind of, I almost get nervous when I hear these things because I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to be, so word I'm look, I don't want to be vulnerable, right? So it's almost like you had to step into your vulnerability in order to let go of those blockages. The other question I had after you felt that sensation almost and you felt those emotions, what was the feeling right after? Was it blissful? Was it peaceful? Did you just know that you had let go of something? What did that feel like?
Yeah, great question. So, this was a slow process because that I don't know how long we were there. I cannot remember anymore. You
Mm-hmm.
know, how long it took actually for that fizzling out. What I do remember is that after the ritual, like the next day, there was this experience of an opening. And then it just continued, including my yoni open more to pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
That is the curious thing because and this unencumbered pleasure, like the woman's energy is so once it's reawakened, that energy just dances, multiple orgasmic uh, you know, feelings or waves, or just being in the orgasmic ether. Doesn't have to be a particular high point, but a woman can stay there for a long time when she's reawakened.
Mm-hmm.
And by clearing our yoni, and what I mean by that, clearing the imprints of the past, we free ourselves physically, sexually, we free ourselves in the heart because the whole experience of that guy being there for me just so present.
Yeah, let me say
I
something
just
about the,
yeah,
go ahead.
so I could just trust, you
Yeah.
know that in itself was a healing, having a guy there like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to just be clear, CJ, that the ritual is not in place of your mutual lovemaking, where you are back and forth and giving and taking and orgasming and so on. A lot of what you learn in the practices as we approach them in Tantra Nova will inform your mutual lovemaking. Yet the ritual stands alone, and there's a design to it. There's a giver and there's a receiver. So Elsbeth was explaining her experience as a receiver, and as a giver, as a man, when you're giving, because you mentioned vulnerability. Of course, when you're receiving, there's a vulnerability that men learn to step into because we have two
Yeah.
emotions that are like okay, and it's not vulnerable. It's fucking. Those are the two things that are okay to be guys.
Yeah.
We are capable of this vulnerability, of this intimacy, of this, tenderness. We are capable of that, and it's a willingness to step into it and be comfortable in that skin as well.
Yeah,
So for the man in the
yeah,
give,
but in the giver, you
yeah,
want to oh yeah,
that's what I
talk
was going
about
to
the
say.
giver
Yeah,
because I think you'll appreciate that.
yeah. So
All right.
for the man as the giver, one of the things you learn in the practices that Elsbeth mentioned is how to move in the yoni with your hand. And one of the most important things you learn in the practice, workshop, is how to manage your own sexual energy. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you do when you're working with your beloved and you're supposed to be the giver and she's just receiving and it's not about mutual lovemaking, but yet you have an erection. So learning how to what we call transmute that sexual energy to your heart with your breath and your energetic awareness to use that energy to now hold the space and perform the ritual. Again,
Mm-hmm.
this is a specific ritual, doesn't take away from mutual lovemaking, yet it's very important to hold that space because for the receiver, she may be wet and engorged and sexually alive, yet she's going through a process of something around what she set out as an intention. And it's not a time for her now to become an adult and give and take and so on. She
Mm-hmm.
is using that sexual energetic, that altered state of awareness to get in touch with, as I mentioned earlier, something she doesn't see. And it's the same thing for the man. So the ritual is very important for the roles to be held and adhered to because it can be very damaging for the receiver if you suddenly say, well, it's on, I'm hard, you're wet, let's fuck. You can't, that's not the time for it.
Yeah,
you
Mm-hmm.
know
and that in itself is healing. It's
Yeah.
so healing for women to know their man or their practice partner is there for you without wanting anything from you, yet
Yeah.
fully present, and also, what may be there for the men to overcome, or like, feeling criticized, or
Yeah, one of the things about this is I get right to that, but one of the things that's intelligent about sexual energy, again, it was, for the first time, I'll say this, it was creating life before we had language. There
Hmm.
is an intelligence. So when we bring our consciousness to the sexual and allow it to lead us back to what we've forgotten, which is this Garden of Eden, which is this effortless state of being, which we start out in the womb service, before our
Yeah.
minds develop, we're just floating around and it's so wonderful. Oh my God, it's just blissful. And all of a sudden, whoosh, we're born, these bright lights cracking the bottom. Some guys are getting their wee-wees cut. We're thinking, send me back. And then life happens, all this good and bad and up and down and potty training, my God, and falling in love and out of love and all these things. And then we get to a point where we want to create something that is maybe the antithesis, the opposite of what we would like to create in our life. But we've had all those experiences of that other thing. And so that neurosynaptically and memory and belief is there, part of us. But yet we have a dream about, a vision about something we want to create out there. Like in Elsbeth's case, it was a beloved. But she had made a decision at a very early age that was appropriate then, that men can't be trusted. Everything was telling her that. And even as an adult later in her life, she wanted consciously to create something else, but neurosynaptic, energetically, and belief-wise, this thing was still in the background. So it took this altered state of the sexual to get to that unconscious energetic frequency, to let it be, to then move with grace, ease, and flow towards this thing that she most deeply, and then she created it. And that's the magic of the sexual in terms of how we can, with our intelligence, use the intelligence of the sexual and where it leads us to open something up. And
That's
that's
it.
how we have applied it. Now, there are a lot of variations of Tantra in the world. And a lot of guys hear this, oh, good, I want to have a better orgasm and better sex. And yes, as I said earlier, it will inform your lovemaking. But what we're doing with it, what we have been doing with it, is using this energetic, creative energy to open something up that we otherwise couldn't get to through talk therapy or through other forms of meditation and so on. Because the sexual is a unique approach to transformation.
unique access to the human being. And
Yeah, very well
really,
said, yes.
that is what we support our students in. Can you say a little bit more about the guys, what they may also learn in a giver role
Right,
further?
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
It's very
Interesting.
important
Yeah, look,
because, yeah,
your
uh,
wife is taking notes.
I
yeah,
gotta
women,
take notes too.
women, you said earlier, CJ, guys, we kind of like think we know and we don't know, and women and men seem to be so opposite. Yet at the beginning in the womb, we're zygotes and we're androgynous, and then it's
Hmm.
later decided man or woman. And as grown adults, we have aspects of testosterone, estrogen in our system. As we get older, the whole thing
Hmm.
reverses itself. So what we're talking about is how can we integrate this masculine, feminine, yin yang balance as a way of being and listening. So for the man in the tantric practices, it's about really learning to, in all the variations there are, first is learning to separate ejaculation from orgasm. In that process, we start to uncouple the addiction, the unconsciousness we have around this the man's penis in Sanskrit is called lingam, which means wand of light. Much
Hmm.
more endearing than dickhead,
Yeah.
right?
I like that. I'm gonna tell my wife that it's the wand of
Yeah.
light.
Wand of light, baby. You
Open
got
up and receive.
right. That's right. That's right.
Wand of light or magic wand. I
I
mean,
like that. Yeah.
get any better?
Right. There's a whole other feeling about it. So for the man and learning to separate ejaculation from orgasm, yes, it will inform his lovemaking. And a lot of guys say, well, I don't need that because I can last as long as I want. I'm not a quick comer. It's not about lasting. What we're talking about is consciously circulating what we call this orgasmic nectar. And that's done with breath, energetic awareness, and it's dancing on the edge of the sword. Some people
Hmm.
call it edging, but we're not talking about just edging. We're talking about really playing in that ether in a way that it can last. It's like riding the orgasmic wave. And
Hmm.
that's another level of listening and being in that energy. And mutual lovemaking, it's great. And or with yourself, it's great. And in the ritual practice, and for man as the giver, it's important to learn to, in terms of this, mastering ourselves, mastering and getting past the unconsciousness. The little guy with the little erection. Look, Ma, no hands. And we're run as grown adults by our little head our whole life. So
Yep.
this is uncoupling that being run by and being sourced by now, being
Hmm.
sourced by.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting. Yeah.
Yes. So let me add something further to this whole, what Freddie called separating ejaculation from orgasm. You
Mm.
you called it that, yeah?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. Mm-hmm.
So because in our Western world, in the Western world, we think that's the same, orgasm and ejaculation. They aren't. Ejaculation is a reflex that goes off in the pelvic floor just right before the ejaculation happens. Orgasm is the energy, like the sensation, when you really get full as a man, and it arises, like that wonderful feeling, that is just like so encompassing. um, and that this sensation, a man can learn how to move this sensation up into his heart with the breath, because energy only moves with the breath. When we don't breathe, we die. I mean,
Hmm.
it's rather
Oh yeah.
obvious. So in the tantric practice, we put that to use, and both for men and women, learning how to move energetic breath, both in subtle states, and Freddie can lead us in a practice in a moment if you wish.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in aroused states where we can move up that arousal from our sexual center into the heart, all the way up into the third eye, into our projects, given that it's creative energy, we
Hmm.
can use that creative energy for greater pleasure. We can use it to heal our physical body. We can use it to connect with our heart and come more to harmony within ourselves, and fuel that love energy from the heart. We can use it in our for our consciousness, and
Hmm.
then use that energy that is life-giving in nature to create our projects in life. It can be used in
Interesting.
different ways. For that, we want to learn how to use the breath and move that energy. So the orgasm is that energy, that sensation that a man can breathe up literally. He can learn it and bring it into his heart. When he is connected between his sex and his heart, he becomes more integrated, feels more whole within. And then, of course, when he's connected with his heart, I can feel it in my heart. Because when I want to connect with Freddie, I start feeling it in my heart. I don't start feeling it in my yoni first.
Hmm.
However, most men, when they want to connect, they start feeling it in their sexual center.
Yeah.
Lingam
Yeah.
may get a little alive or something. And so when he comes just from his lingam, that doesn't speak to my heart. So like he comes from the lingam when he wants to connect. I come from my heart when we want to connect. We are like two ships passing in the
Oh
night.
wow.
We have the same intention to connect, but we come from different loci. So in the tantric practice, the man learns how to breathe up that arousal or that awakening in his lingam when he wants to connect. Breathe it up into his heart. When his heart opens, I feel it, my heart opens. And when my heart opens, my yoni opens, and then we have a circuit, so we
Yeah.
come on a
Yeah.
circular motion, because that is when we become more connected.
But you see, the state of deep feeling that happens in the sexual, for guys, it's felt, again, as Elspeth said, starts in the lingam. And given our social, modeling, it's only okay to show fucking or fighting,
Hmm.
not intimate
Yeah.
connecting or loving, feeling. And so once we allow ourselves the freedom to start moving that energy to the heart, as Elspeth was just sharing, we can start to open up a whole nother possibility of emotional breadth and width. And women really get, oh wow, when that opens, they get that you're not just there for some lusting self-love
Hmm.
reason, even though it's not always the case for us. It's just what we've learned as the only way for us to show our love, as opposed to from the
Yeah,
heart and then the lingam.
yeah. So there's no vilification here. It has to do with, so male sexual energy is based in testosterone. We call it the quick hormone. Goes up quickly, gets easily aroused, and then it drops quickly. That
Yep.
makes sexual energy. Feminine sexual energy it starts like this, hanging out. We don't know if it's coming or going. Oh, just let's give up today. It's not working. No, we want to stay with it, breathe through it, so that it can
Mm-hmm.
awaken because it's based in estrogen, which is the slow hormone. So it calls for awakening. And when it's awakened, it can, as I said earlier, go for a long time, multiple orgasms, orgasmic waves.
Mm-hmm.
And so here, when we look at them together, it may go like I remember when I came to this country, within a couple of years in my early 30s, I started dating again, and that is what I encountered. He came and went,
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
and I was
Oh God.
you know? And if that happens once or twice, okay, but if that is more the rule, it's very frustrating. And if I
Yeah.
had known then what I know now, I would have started training them. But so anyway, CJ, this is where we want to, what all we're talking about for the men really has to do with this then. He breathes up from his sexual center into his heart center that connects himself with himself, that allows him to stay present, holding space for her without losing his pleasure. And then we can meet on the plateau and ride the wave together, which doesn't mean that we have to be on a 9 together on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the ejaculatory moment. It could be one could be on a 5, the other on a 7, or 3 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's that coming together where we can, and this actually opens up trust for the woman, because when a man can do that, she knows, oh, he's here for me,
Mm-hmm.
not just for his self gratification. So we can, and that opens my heart, that opens my yoni, and then I can just be in the flow. I don't have to worry. I don't have to, is it gonna happen? Which
Mm-hmm.
it contracts me so much, nothing can flow anymore after that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really for our own sake that these practices serve us, but and for the couplehood, that
Mm-hmm.
we dance together in a whole new way. Let me go
Interesting.
back to the differentiation between ejaculation and orgasm, if that is okay.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, so physiologically, what happens when we speak about ejaculation is that there is a muscular ring around the base of the lingam or the penis,
Mm-hmm.
which you may be familiar with, And then on that scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the ejaculation, around 9.5 or 9 3/4, what happens is that the scrotum pulls up like this, just like this, and this muscular ring starts quivering, just like that. Both of these actions in service of ejecting the ejaculate. And when the ejaculate is gone, the energy is gone
Mm-hmm.
Practice.
you know. So then a man wants to rest or zone out in front of the TV. There's often a disconnect between him and his partner, which is biologically totally understandable because each ejaculation is a tremendous depletion of life force energy for the man. So then
Mm-hmm.
it takes time to replenish, for younger men, shorter time, for older men, a longer time, but it does need to be replenished. So, in that foregoing ejaculation, not to ejaculate, but not holding it down like all the energy in the center either. First, a man wants to learn how to master that reflex.
Yeah.
Because that's a reflex like when you hit the knee and the knee, the leg comes up. And a man can, cultivate that he can hold that muscle down and then the ejaculate doesn't move up, so he doesn't lose his energy. And then he breathes up the energy. He holds it down here, and then he breathes up that wonderful orgasmic energy like this up into his heart. And tell him a little bit how that feels.
Well,
Yeah.
that sounds like, well, okay, I'm breathing. How do I do that? So we teach you how to do that. But one of the things you can pick up on right now is you put your attention on the sensation and location and your intention to move it with your breath. So now you're using your mind's focus, not just thinking about it and waiting for it. You're actually focusing on creating it. So,
Yeah.
so for the man, that is a circulation of that nectar, and that becomes a whole nother experience. We don't advocate to never ejaculate. What we advocate is that you have a choice because you don't always have to ejaculate to experience a really wonderful sexual experience. And that's what most guys do. They kind of get in there and it's like boom, 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 and maybe it's great along the way, but there's this finish and it's got to finish. And the finish is every moment, so it's like every moment you can be breathing it up and having that orgasmic experience as opposed to 3 seconds and done.
Yeah, without losing the energy. But it may be really useful for guys if you shared with them how you feel not ejaculating and being so fulfilled.
Yeah, because a lot of guys have heard, well, if I don't ejaculate, I'll get blue balls, or the medical term priapism. You've heard that Viagra commercial. And if an erection should last more than 4 hours, seek medical attention. First of all, I'm thinking 4-hour erection, yay, the key, CJ, is breathing. As long as you're breathing, you're oxygenating those spongy tissues of the penis or the lingam. And when you're complete, the blood will just easily flow out. I've been doing this since I was 13. I'm 67 now. And so there's no, priapism that I've ever experienced or anybody who's come through our work.
Without ejaculation.
Without ejaculating.
That this really, and how do you feel?
When you're complete, you're complete. And what's nice is you still have energy because energy is one. It's not just sexual energy or angry energy. It starts out as just energy. Yeah. And so when you transmute that energy, you still have energy available to you. You haven't lost it in an ejaculatory reflex. You still have energy for cuddling or for more lovemaking later or for a busy day the next day or for whatever it might be, and which is nice to have a choice.
Yeah, and you can also use it to actually channel that orgasmic high energy into your pursuits in life.
And that's one that you can do exactly. You learn in the workshop. That's part of what you're learning is how to channel an openness that happens, and then the availability of that energy towards that thing that you want to create more of.
And women can do that too. I channel also my energy now. We don't start out there with women. Remember that for women, it's about reawakening. It's not sustaining, because once it's reawakened, it can sustain. Unlike for men, it gets so easily excited, It's the sustaining and the circulating is what needs to be cultivated. So for the woman, it's really the awakening and then the sustaining happens. So we want to really support women in open themselves up to themselves in that way, because that is the beautiful goddess aliveness, where we flow. I mean, feminine energy is so seductive and so enlivening to herself and then to a partner. I mean, just looking at women, I like to be around them because it's just like when they are awakened, it's just like this flow.
that feminine energy is what's going to save the world. And in terms of how we are as a government with other people, how we treat ourselves, how we treat each other, that loving energy, that is the energy that's going to save the world. And man or woman can come with that energy. And we learn to be in that energy and aware of that energy as men in these practices, bringing consciousness to, again, the unconscious. Historically, CJ, men have been lauded for their sexual prowess. Harems, Playboy, first time you have sex, yay, dad's like, good, you're a man now, here's some rubbers, you're talking about it. Women, on the other hand, have been vilified for their sexual aliveness, called whores, and today in parts of the world they could be stoned to death for having sex out of wedlock. So women are uncovering and discovering their sexual power. So as Elsbeth said, for a woman, it's uncovering and discovering her orgasm. For men, it's learning how to master the reflex. A lot of women have never had orgasms. And a lot of that's social repression that they've been indoctrinated with and modeled by.
Yeah, that's one dimension.
That's just one, of course.
Another dimension is also that, just as Freddy described, there are such differences how women are considered and men. And I can see how a woman's energy that is so, enticing, can be so enticing, that for some men can be a real, being so I mean, particular.
And unless we learn to master it as men, women will always feel subjugated by our aggressiveness. You know, because we get many couples who come and they're in the peak of their sexual energy in their 30s, and she's like, I don't know if he loves me, and he's like, of course I love you, baby. Look at my erection, and she's thinking like, well, yeah, but can you love me with your heart? And that's
Yeah.
not something we learn. We learn, hey, I love you. Look, I'm hard. I'm erect. Let's fuck. You know, that's how I show I love you, as opposed to let me learn to move that to my heart and be in a tender place. And then we can move with grace, ease, and flow towards the sexual or not.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that connection is enough to remember
Yeah.
Yeah.
sweetness.
So, you know, CJ, I feel that both are responsible for creating a new future here. So what you just described, you know, really becoming aware as a man of your strong testosterone energy, and then that you have a choice. Because in the way how women were considered, it's like we were the culprits, and we were at fault for, I mean, through the millennia, you know, for men to be tempted, you know, just like,
She's got an evil spell. She's a witch.
All the music, yeah, reflects
Yeah,
that.
you see it, man. So they put habits on them and burkas
right,
and all kinds of things.
Oh
exactly.
yeah.
Positive sexuality and they're whores and made laws, and I mean, even
To
today
this
women are
day,
fighting for
even
their
in
freedom.
Yeah.
this country, I mean, we are not that far from it, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
anyways, is something for the male to further cultivate it in terms of owning his wonderful testosterone energy instead of being a slave to that energy, you know. And the tantric practice is a beautiful way because it's so integrative, you know. Um, for us women, you know, like I also feel that it's time for women to mature in terms of their sexual self, their expression, their connectedness to their aliveness. Of course, as Ray said, many women may not have experienced orgasm. So, for first awakening myself and being open to this, also not expecting the guy to do it all for me because he doesn't have a clue. You know, we really expect something that is just much too much. But then also, I just taught a workshop for women only this past weekend. And at some point, I said, you know, for me, the feminine energy is the guiding energy in relationship. While at the outside, you know, it may look the guy is leading because the energy is more protruding. But underneath, it's really us women who have quite a bit of power, not power over, but power, if we are aware of it, to guide it. Like, for example, with, you know, oh, see, of course I love you, I have a heart on. You know, I as a woman, I could also engage with that. Oh, darling, wonderful, wonderful. Breathe it up for me, you know, and then supporting him. Uh, Instead of being in this place, oh, he should reach me through his heart right away.
Reach him through her heart and connect him, show him, lead him the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that requires a woman to be really grounded and centered in herself, in her heart, in her yoni, in that connection.
And a man to be willing to be led too, in that
Right.
sense, right?
Yeah.
Oh, baby,
Yeah.
shut up and turn over, and you can see how women, have shut down their sexual aliveness because unconscious men. Because if a woman's just a beautiful flower, just being who she is, and then the unconscious man comes along and takes that, like, hey, you know what? You must be enticing me. Look at how I feel. I got to do something to you. That's the unconsciousness that's been in the world and still is in the world.
Yeah.
And so what we're really doing with this work, and I have a men's workshop going on this weekend, is introducing men to more consciousness around the sexual and how we can
Yeah.
use it to empower and to inform and to uplift and inspire.
Super interesting. I mean, it's captivating from beginning to end, but I'm just like, it comes from a place of surrender, which I think is number one. It's almost like not just vulnerability, but it's almost like surrendering yourself to it. Even the actual emotion, from my perspective, it's almost like in the moment you have to surrender yourself to the fact that there's an energy flowing through you. And I mean, it's kind of like you mentioned before, and like the analogy I kind of had in my mind. It's like the woman can almost be the wind to the man's ship, right? So it's like, hey, you know what? You want to sail? That's cool. I can guide you in the right direction. And the
That's
man can try to resist it, but then it's just gonna, it's all gonna fall apart. But it's almost like bringing these two things. And one thing that you guys mentioned before that was just beautiful was almost like that sexual circuitry, right? It's almost like the two become one, and really, really harnessing that energy. It's really that yin yang almost just coming to life, and at the same time revolving to almost create whatever it is that you want. And again, being in that altered state, which we are usually not. And I mean, to your point, Freddie, it's just like, well, let's just start fucking, and
yeah.
usually that's just not.
And even in that unconscious fucking, for most people, in that 3 seconds for the guy of orgasm, he's free for a few moments. He's reconnected to the infinite. So what we're talking about is being able to consciously flow in that for as long and consciously as you want to. And then once you do it there, it starts showing up everywhere. It shifts the way that we listen to our life, the way we have conversations, the way we listen to our own thoughts and inner dialogue, and how we live into our dreams and what's possible. It begins to shift. If it's anywhere, it's everywhere. And once you bring consciousness to the sexual, the kernel of that creativity and pleasure starts showing up in areas of life that seem completely unrelated to sex in the simple process of living.
That's interesting. I mean, the one question I have, and you guys had it mentioned it here as well in the questions, but it's almost like, first of all, I mean, this is probably a process. It's not going to be overnight. I figure, right? It's almost there's a little bit of mastery required to it.
Right.
But
And even when you've been doing it for as long as we've been doing it, you still are confronted with your own unconsciousness. It's being able to recognize it quickly and get off of it. That's where the mastery comes in.
I mean, my mind is blown. It's kind of like, again, I'm going to take notes before I release this episode and be like, all right, guys, so I got to, do this.
Get out of the world, CJ.
No,
More people, the better, man.
what we were thinking is to give the audience a gift. What do you think about that?
100%. Yeah, I'll be the first one in line.
Yeah, and the gift is a like an introductory workshop to sexual meditation, where we teach practices, the foundational practices, how to move the breath, how to connect with the breath, how to listen to energy, because when we say, okay, now move your energy in your body, what am I going to do? So, because it's not anything we got educated in. We don't have a class in high school or college on human energy and how to engage with it. It's very elusive because energy we cannot grasp, we cannot see. It's like, but just like here, the frequencies that go from our computer to your computer, it's pure frequency. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a miracle that we can see each other. Of course, the frequency then gets translated into pixels and sound. And so it's the same with human energy. So it behooves us if we learn about how energy, human energy shows up within us, because once I know that, I can interact with it. So like how I listen for my sensations in my body, because that's frequency. How I listen for my emotions, pure frequency, love, anger, joy, hate, bliss, jealousy. They have different levels of frequency. And then, of course, our thought frequencies. Like if I live in the narrative of, there are not good women out there, or every time I fall in love, I get disappointed. That is then the self prophecy. What is it?
Self-fulfilling
Fulfilling
prophecy.
prophecy. And so how can we become more aware of our thought frequency, emotional frequencies, frequency of sensation? And that is how we lead people into a deeper listening through the energy system. And then it's not anymore so hairy-fairy and what am I looking for? And then we teach the breath, and Freddy can lead a short practice just
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, why don't we do this now, and then I
Okay,
say
we can
more
do
about
this.
the
We
gift.
can kind of start to do this and then share what we want to give to your audience. Okay, so seat it comfortably, uncross your legs, get up as comfortably as you are being erect, sitting on top of the stack of your spinal column on top of your sit bones. Your eyes can be open, closed, or soft focus. Hands in your lap, one hand on your belly. We're going to do a particular kind of breathing. Great. So just feeling the earth supporting the floor supporting you. Breathe and enjoy this moment. Following with your awareness, your breath coming into your nose, down your trachea, into your lungs, extending into your diaphragm and belly like a big balloon on your inhalation. Really feel your hand, your belly extend into your hand on your inhalation. Really exaggerate that extension. With your awareness, follow your breath back up and out through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm. As thoughts come, let them go, let them be. Don't engage. Keep your focus on your breath. Into your nose, down your trachea, lungs, extending into your diaphragm and belly like a big balloon on your inhalation. Following with your awareness and focus, your breath back up and out through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm. Letting your thoughts come, letting your thoughts go. Continue to breathe in this manner. I'm going to keep speaking. You are your own witness to any thoughts, conversations, interpretations, or meaning. For these few moments, just breathing and being, letting your thoughts come, letting your thoughts go. And rise of your belly on your inhalation, flattening of your belly on your exhalation through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm.
And while you're breathing in and out, notice how you're feeling right now. Notice how your body is feeling. Notice any sensations in your body. Now notice your emotional state. And notice your state of mind, your state of thought. And then slowly come back when you are ready. Open your eyes, and CJ, if you could just share how you're feeling right now.
Really relaxed. Really relaxed. For a moment there, I'm like, what's pressing up against my chin? And I'm like, oh, it's the microphone. So I was really kind of just out of it there. I was like, oh, wow. Like, I was almost, yeah, just like a full body relaxation. I love that. And honestly, Freddie, I was going to say, you put out an audio freaking recording out there, I will listen to it because you got a soothing voice, man.
Yeah, we got a few of them out there. We got a few meditations. We got a gift for you, actually.
Actually, in the gift, there is that practice. So you can practice it every day with that video.
No, definitely, yeah. Because, I mean, this is exciting for me because I try to meditate every day, for at least 5 to 10 minutes, just in the morning or in the evening, but sometime always to make it, incorporate it into my daily routine. Obviously, now that I know this about the sexual energy, I'm like, well, this is something I would definitely want to incorporate because I see a lot of truth in it. And obviously, the explanation and everything that you guys talked about for me, it just makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. And the thing is, like, I just want to explore this more and more. So, I mean, before you guys take off, first off, thank you for coming on the show because you really opened my mind, and I was looking forward to this conversation for a while. And second of all, tell us all about where we can find you, all your links, TantraNova, Chicago. I mean, I might have to visit, but tell me some more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our website is TantraNova.com, TantraNova.com. TantraNova like supernova, but Tantra, not TantraNova. And there's lots to be looked at, and all the programming we have for singles, for couples, for coming here solo, coming with a partner, or, co-ed, being paired up with a practice partner. And then with a gift, I'm going to send you that link so you
Okay.
can on the show notes. And that is called Introduction to Sexual Meditation, where we teach and talk more about the principles and practices for that, and with very concrete practices. You know, one is the breathing practice, a little longer than we did it just now. And then another practice that leads us so that we can learn more how to move energetic breath and also to tune with the different vortices in the body, that each of them holds a different kind of emotion, kind of awareness, and that also helps then to tune more with our energetic self. And then we
Excuse me.
speak further about, you know, how to channel energy for the man and for the woman. So that is really a great beginning. And if you want to learn more, there are different ways. We also do work online in private programs, one-on-one, or Freddy's men's workshop is accessible both in person here in Chicago and online on Zoom. So it's a hybrid, so you don't even have to travel if that, you know, would pose difficulties. Just for women, it's the same. My women's workshop is hybrid, so women can come on by Zoom or in person. The co-ed workshops are all in person because it's really when you work with a partner or come solo and get paired up. So just to know that, including for you, CJ, if you want to learn more from Freddy, you know, just see what you could create, particularly around that channeling of your sexual energy. And then, of course, you're invited with your wife.
Oh, of
That would
course,
be
yeah.
exciting, you know.
Or you could put together a men's workshop. I'll come up to Montreal or to Vancouver.
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 Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, because like I said, this is captivating to me. And I think, like, I've talked to so many doctors, and it's interesting, right? And they're all saying the same thing. They're like, something's changing, you know, the energy's different in the world. And I really feel like we're letting go of that old shell of like, you know, this, that, and the other, and these preconceived notions that just don't make any sense anymore. And people are looking for healing. And I see this as a way to heal. And that's kind of why I started this podcast was I want to explore different ways to heal, right? So we can really get ahead and really evolve as human beings. And, you know, it's mainly catered to men, but obviously your perspective, Dr. Elsbeth, you know, we need that. We need that as men to really explore and understand the energies around in this world and really getting to know the feminine more, right? So, I mean, honestly, I love what you're doing, and I'm just supremely grateful for you guys coming on the show today. I had a great time.
Thanks for your platform, CJ, and inviting us. Yeah, really good meeting you and hope to do more together.
Thank you. Thank
No,
you.
and thank you so much. And honestly, guys, all the links are going to be in the description. And again, thank you for coming on. Look forward to talking to you guys again.
All right.
All right. Take care.